Office of Global Engagement, and we organized this series with the Office of International Scholars. We're very happy that you're with us tonight. Today, we are pleased to welcome Augustina Owusu, who will be speaking to us today about keeping track of entities, the use of indefiniteness, definiteness articles in language. But before I introduce her, I would like to remind you that our next lecture will be given by the School of Nursing's Gordon Scholars, Stella Goretti and Luca Benetocchi, and they will be talking about nursing's impact on the health and well-being, a global perspective. And this will take place on the 2nd of March, again, right here at W101, and also live streaming on Zoom. So to our special guest tonight, Dr. Owusu is from Ghana, and I broke her computer. And she recently completed her PhD in linguistics from Rutgers University, where she worked with Professor Simon Charlotte. Her dissertation was on cross-categorical definiteness and familiarity. She is currently a visiting professor in the linguistics program here at Boston College. Augustina's main research area is in the semantics of African languages. She works on Akan, a Niger-Congo language that's spoken in Ghana. Her research focuses on how African languages contribute to linguistic theory, specifically formal semantic theory. Her research involves critically applying current theories to Akan and other Kwa languages in order to account for empirical data, while also looking to support or revise the existing theory. The goal is to highlight the significance of these understudied languages in the search for an adequate theory. The goal of this research program is also to pique the interest of native speaker linguists in formal semantic analysis for African languages. In addition to linguistics, Augustina is particularly interested in the role of women in conflict resolution, peacekeeping, and peace building, with a focus on African women. And she also worked as a volunteer ESL instructor for a refugee resettlement organization. Let's all give a warm welcome to Augustina Owusu.
This is all we have to do. Thank you very much, Brian. Thank you, everybody, for coming. This is very, very important support, and I am overwhelmed. So, like Brian said, my main research focus is the semantics of African languages. Right? That is where my passion is, that is where I'm interested in. Today, I am going to give you a little bit of the field that I work in. When you talk about a small area of it, show you why it's interesting or why it's necessary that we do this type of work that I do. I will not bore you with all the semantics, nitty-gritties, but I'll give you a bigger picture and hope that we would actually see why we should be focusing on theories of African language. In every conversation, since we sat here, since this one, when we start talking, we always talk about entities. Things are being talked about. I can say a sentence like, don't read the book about fish. The entities that are being talked about here. There's John, who is an entity, he's an entity that's a book about fish. Fish could also be an entity, but here we're talking about a book about something. So I can take that book and I can pick up John in that conversation. So these are the two entities that have been introduced now. Now, because these entities are an important part of conversation, language has this system where we keep track of the things that we've introduced. So when I started a conversation with you and I told you that John read a book about fishes, you said John. You said, okay, Katina mentioned John. He must be important. Let me think about John. She mentioned, a book about fishes. That might be important. Let me keep that in mind. Let me track what she's going to say next about these things. So that is what the main goal of the talk. How, as humans in communication, we follow these things. And what are the linguistic devices that we use to follow these things up in the sentence? In English, I can say, John read a book about fish, he loved it. Well, he refers back to John. It refers back to a book about fish. So John read a book about fish, he loved it. Now you only know that he refers to John in this case because you kept who John was. Assuming that I entered the room and the first thing I told you was, he loved it. You're going to say, okay, I think what Augustina is saying, but not today. Today she's going to talk about game, I don't know who she's talking about, who is he? He should always refer to somebody. It's the same way. If I said, John has it, or John loves it, it's that should point to something. Without something else, this communication doesn't work. So in English, we have ways of saying, I kept track of the things, the entities you introduced, and I'm going back to talk about them again. Now, this could be said by one person, this could be said by different speakers, it doesn't really matter. We keep track between conversation speakers, we keep track of things. You can continue this conversation and say, John read a book about fish, he loved it. Sadly, the book is out of print. Now here we use it, after we use the pronoun, we can still use the book to refer back to the book that was about fish. So we've used two things to talk about something that has been mentioned before. It and the book. So English has devices which we can use to talk about things that we said initially. So now we're keeping track of things. The first time you mentioned an entity, I said, okay, this entity exists. I'm going to keep it in my mind, or whatever that we think humans store knowledge. Then after that, I can say, okay, go back to that thing that you mentioned before, and now we're going to use a pronoun to refer to pick that in that. After that, I can still use another device to refer back to it. These devices, we are going to call them anaphoric expressions. So anaphoric expressions are just devices that we use to talk about things, entities that we've already introduced. English, the examples we've seen so far, we have he, it, which are the pronouns. It's 2022, we all know what pronouns are. They do somebody, something, and then English use a definite article. The English also has other things you can use, the demonstrative, but for the purposes of this course, these are the only anaphoric expressions that I care about so far. So these are anaphoric expressions. He, it, the, or pronouns, definite articles. They allow us, these are tools that allow us to go back to something we've already mentioned without repeating names. We could always do, John came in, John sat down, John ate his food. But nobody speaks like that. That is too redundant. So this is what anaphoric expressions are. They refer back to something that has been previously introduced. In this talk, I'm going to talk about an anaphoric expression in a can, the definite article in a can. And I'm going to show that it's really similar but also very different from the English version. I don't talk about pronouns in this talk, but please feel free during the Q&A time. If you have questions about pronouns, I am happy to answer questions about pronouns. But this talk, I'm really focusing on the definite article. Before we go into the work, a little bit about the language that we are dealing with today. So Akan is a language spoken in parts of Ghana and parts of Cote d'Ivoire. So that's some other examples are from versions of Akan spoken in Ghana. This is a map of Ghana. The areas in pink-ish, or whatever color you actually see. I don't even know what color. But wherever is shaded more than the rest and it's not blue, is the part where Akan is spoken. So the map does not Akan. Ashanti is just a dialect of Akan. That is the dialect that you see most of the examples are for. But all the places that are shaded are Akan-speaking places. But the main data that I'll be looking at, or where my research area is the place where it's Mandi Ashanti. That's the dialect that I work on. We have these 47.5% of Ghanaians who speak Akan as a native language. So Akan is one of the, it is actually the popular language in Ghana. A little bit about the country itself. It's a former British colony, had independence in 1957. The capital city is called Accra. it used to be a hub for transatlantic slave trade, so there are still castles in Ghana. If ever you want to be sad, go to Ghana and go see the slave trade castles. There are at least 80 indigenous languages in Ghana, but like I said, that kind of very sort of the lingua franca, but English is still the official language in Ghana. So from grade school till university, English is the language of education. English is also the language of government. So now let's come to ACAN. Let's come back to what we care about, tracking entities. How does ACAN track entities? We know how English track entities. English can use a definite terminal or can use pronouns. In ACAN, if I say Kofi Ama, Kofi is a name, Ama is a name. Now, if I want to be able to talk back at any of these people, to point back to them and say something about them, I can use pronouns, like we did in English. So I can say Kofi Ama, which is the first line of Fred. Now, I want you to pay attention to two things here. So the things I have on the board have three levels. Whenever I have an ACAN sentence, there's going to be three levels. The first level is the ACAN sentence itself, which dashes to show what morpheme boundaries are. The second level is the gloss, which is what actually does these words mean. And then I have the English translation. For most parts, you should only be concerned about the first line and the third line. If the gloss becomes important, I'll point that to you. In the first, one for now is the form marker, which I am saying as he, and no, which I'm saying as her in this case because of the object. And the arrow shows that Kofi would refer to Kofi, no would refer to Ama. And this has something to do with their syntactic position. So the position in which they are is what where no and all refer. One thing that I should flag is that I can't pronounce and I cannot change them. So all here just means third person pronoun. It could be male, it could be female. I can have mark that. No, the same way, no sense, this third person has no gender. So yeah, in Ghana, we are not having the gender pronoun conversation because it's not really relevant. Another way that we can also do, talk about entities that we've mentioned before is to use, first say something with So, how much she asked me, which is how much a student. Just like in English, I can point back to that with using the definite determinant, version of the definite determinant, which here is no. So Sukuni, no, here late. It means that the same student who Amma met, it was that student who was late. This cannot be Amma met student A, student B was late. This is Amma met student A, student A was late. It points back to that individual. And as I said before, my focus is really on the definite determinant. The no thing that acts like English definite determinant, that is what I'm going to focus on. So in a can, no and all and no are pronouns. No with tone is our definite. Now the pronoun and the determinant has the same form. This happens a lot in languages. This is not something that it is important semantically, but for the purposes of our talk, not so important. So these are the rhetoric expressions in ACAN, and I'm just only interested in the definite article. So since the beginning of the talk, you might be thinking, okay, no and the are just translations of each other. Like we do that always. We take a language and we try to find its English equivalent. Sometimes there are languages that don't have the same words, like they don't have the same translations. Some languages we say they don't have articles. Hindi doesn't have articles. But it looks like ACAN has an article that has the same thing that does. So let's see if that's true. Are they just translational equivalent? Well, if I have Papano where I have no in the English translation, I have that. So this is the case where we see no, the English translation has to have that. There's no way that I see no, but there's no telling anybody. Proceed to a pen, not pen, no, yes, it's people the pen was white. So again, we see no, we see the. I should have said this from the beginning of the talk. If you have a clarification question, you can ask me, raise your hand and I would answer that. But if you have a more contextual question, then maybe at the end of the talk. So from these two examples, we might be leaning towards no and the are just translation of privilege. If I have no, I have the, if I have the, I have no. But like always, like everything else, yeah, that's not perfect translation. I don't know if it will be fun if they were perfect translation, but they decided they were not. Take a contract, like that's a new president, journalist, whatever you call your favorite news person, talking about presidents of your respective countries. The American journalist is talking about Biden. And you're saying that Biden will blame somebody for whatever that thing that somebody else has done. I would say the president will blame somebody. I need the, in English, I have told you since the beginning of the talk that is one of the things that allows us to point back to something. But if you have something like president, even if you're talking about it for the first time, English allows you to use the, that says that's only one of these things. It's one of the jobs that done that. Says that's only one of these things. So I allow you to put that, even if it's not mentioned. So that allows you to do that. I can say that president will blame someone. If this new pastor is in Ghana, she's a new person in Ghana, she would have to say Omampeni, which is the correct for president, without no. So the brackets and the star means as well. If you have the star in the bracket, it means the thing in the brackets, if it appears, the whole sentence is that. It's grammatical, just not felicitous at that point. So it's bad. We'll say it's bad. It means that in our can, no is bad in this place. Whilst in English, you need no. In our can, if I'm talking about something that I haven't met the president, I've not mentioned the president before, but I'm saying he's going to blame somebody, I cannot start the news with saying the president, Omampeni, they blame you. I have to say Omampeni, they blame you. So this is a place where English requires the, English doesn't play with that in this position. I can't say, I actually hate that. Do not put that on me. Now, if you put that here, if you're not native speaker and put that here, it actually has a very bad connotation. So everybody, we all run away from that. It's like saying that president, you know, like in English. If I said that president is speaking, it tells me you don't like the president very much. Same thing if you put no in, on president in that can, it says, I don't really care about this guy. So you show feelings, so a newscaster who is trying to be apolitical cannot say president, you know. Now, another thing that would require you to have the is something like sun. Again, it's also you don't have to have mentioned sun before when it allows you to have the, just because there's only one sun. English allows you to say the sun is shining. Well, Kant sort of says, I don't really care. Put that on, put no, don't put no. It doesn't matter. Says area no or area or, it means the same thing to me. So in a can here, it's optional. So we have three cases so far. We have a case where when I can has no, English has the. We have a case where I can English has the, I can no says, please, this is horrible. Do not put me here. I hate you. Then we have a place where English puts the, I cannot say I really don't care what you do. Put me there, don't put me there, you are fine. So it doesn't look like it couldn't be a perfect translation of English no. If we put it as a translation of English, no, there's a lot of nuances we are missing from what no that English doesn't do. So I hope I've convinced you that no, it's not a perfect translation of English. We need to say more for not to ever want. So the other generalizations I just talked about. So in certain context, yeah, translation equivalent, I give you the, you give me no. In other cases, very bad. In other cases, it's just optional. One of the things we have to worry about is optionality, but again, you can ask me about what it means to be optional, or if it's truly optional, because this is, I think that linguists and people who do languages worry about, is that true optionality? But that is tomorrow's problem. We'll worry about that tomorrow. Today, it's optional. Now, another thing that can do, that English cannot do, I'll give you a few minutes to see. So this is the context. Usually when I have a sentence, I give you a context because it's really difficult for people to, if you ask somebody, give me the meaning, is this good in this context? Is this good or bad? People create context in their own mind. And you don't know what is in somebody's mind when you give them a context. So they can say yes with a very exaggerated context or no with a very exaggerated context. So that the linguist gets away from that, I provide you a context and I force you to interpret the sentence in my context. So if you tell me yes, you're telling me yes in this context it's bad, yes in this context it's good, no in this context it's bad. So that is how I don't do data. I force my consultant to think in this context, the sentence I'm going to give you, tell me good or bad. So this is the context. Kofi is having a problem with linguistics. His parents have been encouraging him to ask their neighbor, who's a linguistics professor. But Kofi is too shy. Every day he's told Kofi, you should talk to this man. So finally, Kofi calls his mother out of the blue and tells him, I have spoken to Dr. Breka about him for help. His mother is reporting to his father. This is not Kofi to his mother. This is from mother to father. Mother says, Kofi now for Dr. Breka. I want you to focus on no. And then I'm going to give you a second to think about what no is doing here. And because I'm a very nice person, I'm not going to ask you what your answer is, but I'm going to allow you to think about it. What is no doing here? What is no attaching to? Now, if you know Greek or Italian, you are thinking, well, this is simple, Augustina. No is attaching to a proper name. Yeah, see people nodding here. I'm like, yeah, that's where I'm going. No, it's attaching to a proper name. That is not actually strange at all. In certain languages, proper names take definitely 10 minutes. But that is not the case for Akan. Akan proper names do not take that 10 minutes. If I swap the position of Mr. Griffin, I slap no on it. It says, bye, do not put no here. So we know independently that no does not attach to a proper name. I can't do Mr. Agripano, Kofi. It is also just like saying president. No, it says I have issues with Dr. Agripano. So this is very marked and nobody would use this in a neutral position. So again, let's go back to this example again. What is not doing here if it's not attaching to a proper name? We have no other noun that it could attach to. What no is doing in short is that it's attaching to the whole sentence. Not to the proper name, but the whole sentence. So since the beginning of this talk, I've been telling you that definitely determinants track entities. But now I'm telling you, well, we can track more than entities. We can track sentences. So no is good at saying, that boy came here. But no is also good at saying, this sentence is familiar, or we already have had a version of the sentence before. We can track sentences. No can track sentences. And it indicates, like I put in a marker, it indicates that that sentence has been mentioned before. Like we said something similar. It doesn't have to be word for word, but something that has almost the same substance as the sentence that you are attaching to has been mentioned before. This is not new information. Same way, like if I said the boy, I'm saying this is not new information. You have heard boy before. This boy that I'm talking about, you have heard about him before. I'm just saying something more. Exactly what the sentence knows that. It says, this sentence is not new information. You have heard something like that before. So going back to what Kofi, the context with Kofi and his parents. What did Kofi's parents say? Kofi's parents were like, you should go see Dr. Breka, this is important. You should do this. Kofi, this is important. Now when Kofi comes back to report, what Kofi says is, I have gone to see Dr. Breka now. We said, and then I put the thing I put in brackets, it's not said, but it's understood. I have gone to see Dr. Brifano as we said I should. So I'm reporting back to what initially your first sentence. And because this is sentential and natural, it's not like with SP and natural where I say the word and then next sentence I use the anachoric marker. These two conversations can be apart more than 1 year. As long as the person is tracking both conversations, you can use this anytime. Right? They would have told Kofi to go see Dr. Brifano was in year 1. And then year 4, he decides that he's overwhelmed. He's going to see Dr. Brifano. He can go back to say, well, after seeing that I've messed up, I have gone to see Dr. Brifano. As long as his parents can go back and remember that there was a point sometime in our life when we said that we should go see Dr. Brifano, this is fine. So hopefully I'm convinced you that this is an effort. But just so we convince ourselves more, I'll give you another example that should send home that this is real enough, right? Either it needs an antecedent, it needs something to have been said before or introduced before. One of the things that we saw that pronouns and definitely determinants will do is to refer back to something that has been said before. You cannot use them in the first sentence if you've not introduced anything. Like I said before, I can't come here and say, he is coming, or I like it. Or even I cannot come here and say, the boy is coming. You'd ask me, which boy? Same way, if we go to a party for the first time, you meet somebody at the party for the first time, you cannot say to them, Michelle, Dr. Brifano. First conversation, this is just plain here. If you go to somebody and you tell them, oh, Michelle, Dr. Brifano, they'll try to think, wait, have I met you before? Have we had a conversation before? Have I just forgotten about you? If they reply to this sentence, they're just being nice, thinking, like, you remember them, they don't remember. You know that awkward situation in a conversation where somebody comes to you, say something like, do I know this guy? I think I know him, but I don't remember. I'm just going to be polite and pretend I remember him. And then you have a whole conversation with somebody you don't know, you don't remember. If somebody ever responds to a loose sentence in this case, that is what they're doing. They don't remember, they don't know what you're saying, but they're trying to be polite. So this is real and natural. It needs something to have been introduced before you can say a sentence like no. So I hope now you are a little more convinced than you were before. That this is real and natural. What no one's doing in this instance is saying that I am pointing back to something that you should have kept track of. If you've forgotten about it, your speaker is asking you to remember that because you should know this. There is a contract between the two of us, and that's what said that we should remember. Now I'm taxing you to remember that. Same way I would have done with it now. So now I have convinced you, hopefully, that no track sentences. But what does that mean? What kind of sentences is being tracking? What is not supposed to track? If I say John came here, can I 10 minutes later say John came here? No. Is that what the sentence on? What should be the nature of a sentence that you can put no on? Or what should be the nature of a sentence that you can remind somebody of with putting no? So okay, let's look at Kofi's parents' conversation. They said, you should go and see Dr. Brifano. At the time that they say the sentence, Kofi hasn't gone to see Dr. Brifano yet. So it's not that you were tracking events that have happened, because there's no events that have happened yet. I'm saying you should do this. You haven't done it yet. So we are not tracking events. We are not tracking things that are happening. What we are tracking is issues that have not been resolved at the time of conversation. So I tell you something that's not resolved. We don't know an answer for it. I keep it in mind. I keep it in check. I'm like, okay, I'm going to put that in my notebook. And then sometime later, I might come and ask you that have been solved. But if you resolve it before I ask you, you can come back and tell me. But this is something I am keeping track of. Or as language, as discourse participants, we make a pact that this has not been resolved, but we care about how it's going to be resolved. So let's put it down. Let's think about it. Let's put it down. Once any of us resolves it, then we'll bring it back to say, this has been resolved. Let's take it off our process. Let's cross it off. as you have a plan, like there's other things you want to do. And then when you're done it, you cross it. What are things that are not resolved at the time of talk? Predictions, commands, promises, requests. If I tell you last week it will rain, it's not being resolved now. You don't know if it will rain or not. You can put that in your to-do list. I can put that in my to-do list. And then later on, I can come back and tell you if it will rain or not. Once next week has happened. Say if I told you that I was going to buy you a car when I become a millionaire, so you ask me today, not a millionaire today. When I become rich, I might forget about you, but don't worry about it. I might buy you a car. So these are things that are not resolved at the time of speech. And speakers are keeping track of that. And we want it resolved at some point. What no does is to say, when you have a no sentence says, that issue that we put down that was unresolved, it has now been resolved. So for these parents tell him, you should go see Dr. Bertha. For 3,000 comes to say, check that off your to-do list. That has been done. This is what no comes back to say. Otherwise, no, if all I was doing was to repeat a sentence that has been said, it would have been a redundant marker. Languages don't do that. We don't put things that are redundant. We want words that we use to be meaningful. So if all the marker was doing is saying that this has been said before, it wouldn't have been useful. But now it says no, it says this has been said before, but the first time you had it, it had no solution. Now I've given you a solution, cross it off, mark down. So what Cookie says is marked now. So yeah, I know was very similar in cases, but very, very, very different from English, as we have seen. In the NP domain, we see two major differences where no is good, where the is good, but no is bad, where the is good, no is optional, but in the sentential domain, it's like vastly different. There is no translational equivalent of no in English. English doesn't have anything that behind like the sentential that. Sometimes we say, oh, this one, there's something that means the same thing, it's just not the same. English doesn't have anything that is remotely like sentential that. Then you can put on a word that says, that's how we mentioned before. German has ja, which seems to behave similarly to but English doesn't have a translational equivalent at all. English has nothing like that, but apart from saying a whole sentence like, as I told you, you should do. English doesn't have a lexical item that gives you the same context and things you're not. Why should we care? Why should we care about doing work in Akan to get what the meaning of no are? I mean, it's cool. It seems very cool that no is not there. But why should we care? First, we care because understanding one language means understanding the nature of the language in itself. So we want to, that is the enterprise language sign themselves to understand language as a whole. So understanding one language gives us insight to language as a whole. So we should care. The other reason why we should care is that anaphora as a system tells us something about how language is processed and understood. So we know about how a lot of cognitive linguistics work that try to see how processing works would use anaphora. And the way that Akan anaphora works and English anaphora works will tell us something different about Akan as a language and English as a language. And this is something that we want to know, how humans are processing language. The other reason why, and this is what means a lot to me, why we need to know the difference between English and English that this is the 21st century. We're trying to digitize all languages. We're trying to get into the computer world. One of the things that has to do with machine learning, with natural language processing, is understanding how anaphora works. Imagine that somebody is trying to digitize something Google on Amazon, and says, yeah, the way that Akan works is that it has a marker that's like the. So it translates, it gives the same semantics or the same coding that it would have given the. Look at the problem that is we can wait for Akan. It would put that in places where I can't know where to go. And I have seen, like, there's so many semantics words where people do the same thing. They just know the semantics of then say this is how it should work. But I've shown you at least three cases where no and they are different. We want our work to be able, we want work that shows that this is the exact meaning of the word. If we are going to encode it in a system, this is the exact meaning of the word. And this is what is essential, and this is what should be encoded. And so the work I do is to try to give, in my dissertation, what I do is to give a very precise meaning for no. That if we are trying to digitize, if we are trying to put it in a system, we have a word, a meaning that only would refer to no and no other word. Not in English, not German, not any of those languages, but for Akan and for Akan. So hopefully I've been able to convince you that no and there are different, and that we need to do work like this if we are going to try to understand our languages as a whole. Thank you so much.
Do we have time for questions?
So often one says that the structure of a language reflects the values of a culture or aspects of the culture. I've done a little research on that. So I'm just wondering, from this specific example, how do you think it's reflecting different parts of the culture, if it is at all? Yeah.
Thank you. So it actually reflects, the worldview of Ghanaians, or of the Akan people. One of the things that is I put up, some cases that I said is optional, could be optional. It looks like it's not totally optional. When I say the sun is shining, there are two ways that I'm looking at it. I'm saying one of them is saying the sun, which is the only sun in the universe, is shining, or the sun of today is shining. When I'm saying the sun of today is shining, I need no, because there are multiple suns. So it's today's sun versus tomorrow's sun versus the sun has tea. But when I say sun without no, I am saying the sun of the universe is shining. So the way that we encode these things tells us about how people are thinking about the world. No doesn't like things like precedent because there's only one of them. It's either that's something that says, well, if there's only one, why do you repeat that? If you repeat that, you're being derogation. So there's only one. Don't put no on it because no says this has been mentioned before. It's not important. So that tells us about how people are viewing the world.
We're using the microphone for the live stream.
Thank you so much for that wonderful, wonderful talk. My question is about the use of no with the full sentence. And I'm curious about whether I understand the example with Dr. Agrefa, you would, yes, this one exactly. Once that has been said one time with no, let's imagine for some reason, the mother is reminding the father later that it happened. Would you not say that no, or would you further use the no once it became necessary to use it the first time?
So you repeat it because you think the person didn't hear it, that no, it's fine. But if you repeat it because it had to be said again, then it's bad. The reason why it's bad is because once you check it off your list, you turn it to another level where people are not keeping track anymore. You said this is done. So if it's already done, why are you telling me again? Language just doesn't like that. So it's bad when you repeat it from people's face. Thank you.
I might ask a question, sorry. Just while you're here at it, you gloss this as a definite in all cases. Do you have any alternative glosses for it, or do I need to just totally rethink my understanding of definiteness?
One, I definitely want you to rethink the idea of definiteness. That definiteness is not something that only attaches to now. If all the things that definiteness does is to say, this has been mentioned before. Why is it only entities that get tracked? Things can be tracked. Yeah, but then Of course, there's a word, the way that we got this, we call it a causal determinant. But that is also saying that determinants can take things that are not nouns. So yes, this is really saying, we imagine what you know about syntax.
So you mentioned that the parties will know sort of the universal stuff. So is the rotary meaning the president, is that the fact that it sort of implies if you use it that there's more than one president, it's like
True. So there's some implication going on. Like there's only one person. If you use no, you're implying that there's more than one president, and I guess that is why it gets derogation. So if there's only one president, why then you can just say president, which implies there's one president. So when people say not my president, they will usually use no. That president, no, is talking not my president.
So you said that the no particle can, it's not limited to just modifying nouns for definiteness. Would there be a way to tell whether, for example, in this sentence, it was modifying the verb specifically and it was just placed afterwards, or whether it is in fact the whole sentence? Is there a distinction, or is it like how you process it mentally?
So this is a very great question, right? This is a question that actually answered my conversation, whether it's taking a BT or taking a TP. The test so TP sentences are things that you can say true or false. But BPs are things you can't say true or false. And I already told you that if I say Kokia is going to see Dr. but it's not something that has happened. It's not an event thing. BPs are usually event things. This is not an event thing. The event hasn't happened. I can actually say, Kokia did not go to see Dr. Agripano. If it was an event, it said there's an event that has not happened. And I'm referring back to that event. That is just weird. So the negation is one of the tests that tells us that this is really on a sentence, not on a BP, because I can't say this didn't happen, but I'm referring back to the thing that doesn't happen, that didn't happen. There's also a longer answer if you want to say this.
Thank you.
Hi, this is a question from Margaret Thomas on Zoom. They said, is the role of no in Akan shared by other determiners in other related languages, or is it unique to Akan?
No, it's not unique. So Ga has a version, Ga, which is also a Ghanaian language, has the definite term Allah that also allows causal uses. Haitian Creole, which is the only language not on the continent that has the same similar marker. La has the same causal uses. Ever has a marker that also has causal uses. So they are core language related languages have those markers. So this is not unique to our cat.
I have a question. I'm going to pass it here. You had mentioned, we had mentioned in your bio that you had taught English. And I was curious if when you're teaching English to native speakers, if they are looking for a way to replicate this feeling in English that they can't, that they're used to doing in their native language.
So one of the things that people do is, like I said, this is an issue with translation that Ghanaian linguists are even like at fault for, because we take there is no and we go with it everywhere. So these are things that we are trying to point out and say, no, this is not, we don't want to translate this with no. Same with data, maybe and it doesn't translate well into English, but we still use those translations because it's easier to just tell somebody no is there than to go through all this to show that no is not there. So we pretend it's the same even though we know it's not the same, unfortunately.
Hi, yeah, I think you said like the goal is to like trying to find a system that use something that actually captures the words no and only no in account, but not other things like the. I'm just wondering, like, what do you mean by that? Because I think it's obviously like the original language in account no, it certainly only captures its meaning no in account. I'm just really like, what do you mean by that? Do you mean like using like I don't know, like logic or like choose conditions or some kind of that to capture the idea?
Yes, yes, yes. Well, you have a system that doesn't do translation. So the problem with the system that we have using right now is that we translate it from Latin to English, and English is handicapped. English is handicapped in expressing what's not there. So we want a system that is unambiguous, not English, to be able to express it. So at the end of the day, my system was like my definition for I kind of that's not it's not English, it's a logical system that says this is a definition for no. Now if it happens that some other language has the same, like I'm saying that other and that have the same system, they don't have the same logical representation. But yeah, that is the goal. That is why I use formal semantics. I could have done anything, but formal semantics gives me a tool that says, forget English. Do not use English as your basis. This is an unambiguous way to represent the meaning of no, where you don't run into this problem that we're running.